What's on your radar, Ryan?
When the final stretch of his re-election campaign, conservative Democratic Representative Henry Cuellar is banking to the left. He's taking credit in a mailing I obtained to constituents for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, lowering drug prices, and consistently voting to back the Democratic agenda. Of course, in reality, Cuellar fought the $15 wage bill until it was heavily watered down, and it hasn't become law anyway. He voted with Trump some 75% of the time and was a crucial member of the so-called Gottheimer Nine, which helped force through the bipartisan infrastructure law in order to split it off from Build Back Better, so Build Back Better could be killed solo. So Cuellar brags in that mailer that he voted to lower prescription drug prices, but that provision was in the Build Back Better Act, which Cuellar undermined. So Cuellar's pivot to the left is coming as his campaign hit an unexpected snag recently when the FBI raided his home. We now know that his wife and another aide were also subpoenaed, all of it in connection with the grand jury investigation into some businessmen from Azerbaijan. There's a huge paper trail that suggests what some of this might be about. We know that the Public Integrity Unit is involved, which means the FBI is concerned about potential corruption. So let's run the traps on that. So in January 2013, Cuellar and his wife Imelda flew to Turkey and Azerbaijan on a trip sponsored by an entity calling itself the Turquoise Council of Americans and Eurasians, according to congressional disclosure reports. The trip for the Cuellars cost just south of $20,000 and was approved by the House Ethics Committee. Now, Kemal Öksüz, listed as Turquoise Council president, told the Ethics Committee that no foreign money paid for the trip. Yet in 2018, Öksüz pleaded guilty to concealing the fact that a separate congressional trip in May 2013 to Azerbaijan had in fact been funded by a foreign government. He was sentenced in 2019. So Öksüz had claimed that the trip in question was paid for by the Turquoise Council and the Assembly of the Friends of Azerbaijan, both of which purport to promote regional and transnational cooperation. In truth, the trip was paid for by SOCAR, which is the state oil company of Azerbaijan Republic, a wholly owned national oil and gas company. Court documents show that Öksüz wired $750,000 from SOCAR in order to organize travel for 10 House members and their staff to Azerbaijan. Prior to this deposit, the Assembly of the Friends of Azerbaijan, one of the nonprofits involved in the scheme, had only $283.15 in its checking account. The Assembly of the Friends of Azerbaijan was founded shortly after Cuellar's January trip, but Öksüz served as head of both that and the Turquoise Council. And as the Office of Congressional Ethics later reported, quote, records suggest that this individual used the entities interchangeably. And Cuellar's itinerary for the January 2013 trip on file with the Ethics Committee shows a, quote, briefing at SOCAR and later that evening, quote, dinner with SOCAR executive team. The relationship bore fruit. In July 2013, Cuellar spoke at a Washington, D.C. reception in honor of SOCAR, along with its president, to highlight the importance of a pipeline to deliver natural gas to Europe. That's what makes these kinds of trips so valuable to foreign governments. A nice dinner and a night out on the town builds relationships, and the next thing you know, the company president is appearing with the lawmaker on a stage together. That pipeline and related projects are pivotal to the national interests of Azerbaijan. The company has embarked on an ambitious plan to expand its international footprint, including a network of pipelines that stretch through multiple countries to deliver gas into Europe. The so-called Southern Gas Corridor, built by SOCAR in partnership with BP and other Western energy giants, required an investment of over $45 billion. Now, later that year, in September 2013, Cuellar and other lawmakers sponsored a resolution in Congress expressing support for Azerbaijan's Southern Gas Corridor project, stating that it was in the U.S. national interest to support construction and work closely with the governments of Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and others in the region to have the pipeline completed. The resolution was adopted by the House Foreign Affairs Committee by unanimous consent. So now we've gone from the lavish trip to speaking at the conference to a resolution in Congress. But he kept going. In April 2015, Cuellar announced an affiliation agreement between Texas A&M International University and, the Assembly of the Friends of Azerbaijan, which was described in a Cuellar press release as an, quote, educational and cultural organization, but which we now know, by Öksüz's own admittance, was actually a front for the Azerbaijan oil company. Öksüz is quoted saying in Cuellar's press release, My thanks to Congressman Cuellar for his playing a very instrumental role for this affiliation. This agreement will give a very ample opportunity to TMIU faculty and students. Not only they will study international energy law, politics of energy, environmental impacts, and strategy management, but also they will meet and network with people from public and private sectors. In May 2015, just a month later, the Office of Congressional Ethics published a report detailing the funding violation orchestrated by Oak-Zuz. The FBI began probing too. In announcing his eventual guilty plea, the DOJ said that Oak-Zuz had laid bare the whole scheme. Now, Oak-Zuz was also a campaign donor to Cuellar, records show. Cuellar campaign received $1,000 from him in June 2012 and another $2,500 in February 2015. Now, Cuellar, who's a co-chair of the Congressional Azerbaijan Caucus, continued to promote Azerbaijan's interests. Following the Armenia-Azerbaijan war in 2020, fought over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region, Cuellar petitioned his congressional colleagues to ensure that any humanitarian aid for the conflict would be, quote, provided through the government of Azerbaijan or UN organizations, unquote, and not given directly to Armenia. A letter making the funding request signed by Cuellar was circulated by the BGR Group, a lobbying firm that represents the Azerbaijani embassy. And that's according to records that are on file with the Department of Justice. So that's the next step in the process, where members of Congress try to direct public money to the country or special interest that's been working them. Now, Azerbaijan has been caught up in repeated scandals around the world in which it has been probed for attempting to bribe legislators. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe released a report in 2018 saying that its former members had engaged in, quote, corruptive activities with the Azerbaijan government. The German Bundestag last year also backed a corruption probe after, quote, the Azerbaijani laundromat investigation showed how a network of slush funds financed such caviar diplomacy through opaque payments to politicians across Europe, unquote. The gifts and payments to European policymakers were made in part to shape support for the same Azerbaijani oil and gas interests that had financed the 2013 congressional junket. So this is the Azerbaijan pattern, trying to find pliable lawmakers around the world who will support their interests back home.
Well, this guy's going to jail. This seems pretty bad.
Right, because this is what we know publicly. So what does the FBI have that's beneath this?
Yeah, we don't know enough right now to actually, I mean, this just looks bad.
This by itself
is not enough,
going
but
to jail,
we're going to find out more.
Right.
Yeah, when you're going to, I didn't know anything about this. You're going through, when you got to the point of the corrupt university affiliation thing was when I started going, ooh, this cannot kind of be rationalized away. It's just like, hey, he went on some trips and has some friends.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you got the giant oil company pumping a bunch of money into the university where you're kind of and Cuellar is kind of the boss. He's like a local political boss in Laredo and surrounding area. And so there's also been a whole bunch of resignations. The city attorney resigned. The city manager resigned. Could be completely coincidental. Some of them had only been in office for a couple months. So for them to be resigning right after this FBI raid, had a lot of eyebrows getting raised around the area. You know, was Azerbaijan money kind of funding the entire local machine?
To Laredo, Texas.
To Laredo, Texas.
Laredo, Texas.
One oil-rich province to another oil-rich province.
Exactly. How does this affect his? He's in a tough primary. Right? He has a primary challenger from his left because he's a more moderate or even conservative Democrat.
One of the most conservative Democrats left. Right, so he beat Jessica Cisneros last time.
That's the challenger this time, too.
By 4 points. Very close race. He had Nancy Pelosi's support. The support of the entire kind of Democratic establishment came down to rally behind him. Cuellar paid Pelosi back by then trying to block Build Back Better Act in the House. But that's typical. That's like she only demands loyalty from the left, not from her right. So March 1st, the ballots are going out now. Like the voting is basically already starting, and if we can put this up here, Cuellar has actually responded. You know, he went outside of his childhood home because the like clips of his home getting raided have just been, splashed everywhere locally. So he put up his childhood home and made a quick statement here.
As I said last week, I'm fully cooperating with law enforcement and committed to ensuring that justice and the law is upheld. There is an ongoing investigation that will show that there was no wrongdoing on my part. As an attorney, I know firsthand that the legal system is a pillar of our democracy. I pride myself on being your congressman and always doing things honestly, ethically, and the right way. Behind me is my childhood home in Las Lomas. When I look at this house, I see struggle, I see sacrifice, I see hard work, I see grit. I see Laredo, the 956. This is my home, my community, and why I got into politics. Nothing can distract me from being laser focused on getting the job done for you and for South Texas, the way I always have.
Persuaded?
I mean, actually, even if he's not going to jail or he's not facing charges, he represents the interests of a corrupt foreign state oil company. So like the voters should toss him anyway. That's the best you can say. Right. The voters should toss him anyway. So his opponent, if there's even time to do so, should make hay of this.
She is, and the local paper has actually come out and endorsed Cisneros, even though they had endorsed Cuellar in the past. They made pains in their editorial to say that they had made this decision before the FBI raid, but the FBI raid kind of cemented the question of whether or not this is the guy, because he only won. This used to be a comfortable Democratic district. He only won it by a few points because of that big kind of upsurge of Trump support along the border. That's been redrawn, and it's a little more comfortably blue, I think, this time. But yes, so if she can't win this time,
that'd be sad.
Yeah.
Then they're going to have a congressman in jail. Is what's going to happen.
They might. They might. So our rising panel joins us next. Stick around for that.